Hello and welcome. Today I'll be covering the work Maps of Meaning, The Architecture of Belief by Jordan B. Peterson. This work represents 15 years of his productive labor, 3 hours a day for 15 years, where he reformulated every sentence in the book 50 times over, according to his own testimony. From the early 80s to the late 90s, he worked on this work, and it is an amazing work on philosophy, psychology, religion, and myth, all combined into one tome work, measured response of the human condition. There's 3 quick points that I'd like to make before I get to the thesis. The first is that I'm trying to derive a metaphysic from Jordan Peterson's book. I'm trying to see what it says for an ontology of being and nature. I'm trying to derive a metaphysic from Maps of Meaning. Point 2 is that this book builds relationship between the respective domains of science and of myth. It divides them in their respective domains without putting them in loggerheads or without discriminating against one or the other. And point 3 is that this book, I think, is an extraordinary artifact. If I was stranded on a desert island, I would take this book first out of 5 books. If the aliens came down to Earth, they should read this book first, I believe, to understand humanity and the human condition. Before I get to the thesis still, there's a quote that I'd like to repeat from page 445 to 446 that I've committed to heart and committed to my memory. It goes like this: to the alchemists, sufficient expression of faith meant more than saying Jesus Christ was the greatest man on earth. Sufficient expression of faith meant the attempt to live out the myth of the hero within the confines of individual personality, to voluntarily shoulder the cross of existence and to unite the opposites within a single breast, and to serve as active conscious mediator between the eternal generative forces of known and unknown. If you understand this sentence, you understand the ethic that Jordan Peterson is trying to get across to you as an individual and to his audience and to humanity at large. The thesis, as we'll get in, the thesis. Peterson was driven by the question, why do ideological rivals, the US and USSR, risk total annihilation in their confrontation? His search led him through thinkers of myth, archetype, and the unconscious mind, Jung, Campbell, and Eliade, amongst others. He discovered a map of the architecture of belief, which combined with current psychological science and laid out in the domains of science objective world and mythic normative narrative world, would resolve the initial titanic question. Why do humans confront each other in such a way in an ideological battle? Why is something like Auschwitz possible? Why is any evil possible? Why do humans inflict pain upon each other in group contexts, in group versus group contexts, and otherwise? But the first point, we will get to it through here, but the first point is that the world is discriminated into science object world, into science objective world, and mythic normative narrative world, where mythic normative narrative world relays the world as a forum for action. So the myth, according to myth, the world is a forum for action. The world is like the Shakespearean quote, the world is just a stage, men and women merely players. According to science, there's an intersubjective space, and this is a place of objects, lamps, couches, TVs, fans. This is a place of objects that can be precisely measured but have no values attached to them. According to myth, every object in the room has valence of what you can do with it. According to myth, the world is a stage, a form for action that all humans live. They wake up into a world where they go out and they do a number of things on a big forum for action, a big stage. So the Shakespearean quote is very apt here. So just know that science, the domain of science, is objective measurable things, intersubjective space, and the world of myth is a world of you're on a stage. You're acting on a stage. Simple. Point 2. All humans display hemispheric breakdown into known, unknown, or explored, unexplored territory. So even as Ian McGilchrist gets into his book, The Master and his Emissary, The Divided Brain, The Making of the Western World, the right hemisphere deals with threat, unexplored territory, the new, the anomaly, It tries to put things into context. And then the left hemisphere deals with orderly things, words, written sentences, order, fine-tuning, parsing of order. When a bird looks at you, it looks at a human, and it doesn't recognize it. It looks at it with the eye that reacts, I forget which eye it is, but it goes straight to the right hemisphere, so that the bird can contextualize the human as a threat with the rest of the things that it knows. So unexplored territory is a domain of the right hemisphere. This is a universal human trait, unexplored except for in anomalous neuropsychology, such as schizophrenia or different things like that. But for most humans, the function of exploring territory is lateralized to the right hemisphere, and the function of going over what you already know, reading, writing, is logical steps, philosophy is relegated, lateralized to the left hemisphere. Peterson mentions this. Point 3, we are actually, if you divide myth and science, we are actually adapted to the mythic worldview as a form for action where things have valences. So the human being is not necessarily adapted to the scientific Enlightenment worldview. We are actually adapted to seeing the world as a stage, as a forum for action, where wars take place, where public assemblies take place. It's very clear that human beings, even the way they structure a town, the town has a square in the center where it's a big market or a big forum, such that human beings can act as actors on a stage or as a forum for the best way. It's such a good word, forum for action. So well said. But we are adapted to a mythic worldview, so our evolutionary biology is actually adapted to the world that the medieval mind inhabited. So you see things as having valence. As a sword is meant for war, a plow is meant for tilling the land, a castle is meant to inhabit in times of war and in times of peace. All these different things, we are actually adapted, evolutionarily speaking, to the world of myth, rather than the world of science is something very new in humanity's history. Seeing things as an objective object is new. The precision of it, the lack of detachment from reality is very new. Point 4, the world as myth is divided into stable themes and archetypes. So here we will get into the archetypes. One moment. The world of archetypes. So the first archetype, I will go through these quickly, but the first archetype is Mother Nature, which is divided into life-giving and chaotic, or destructive, generative and chaotic. Mother Nature, so Mother Nature gives birth to you, but eventually it all reaps back and it destroys you, and it creates, and death enters the picture. So it's represented by gods like the goddess Tiamat in the Mesopotamian religion and myth. The god Tiamat, the dragon, or in the biblical narrative, it's the water, the darkness that God confronts with light. Nature is chaotic in its potentialities. It's chaotic. It's darkness. Light is order. Light comes in, and we'll get to this in father culture. But nature is the lizard that confronts you, or the snake that comes after you. It's also the birthing mother, the mother archetype, the saintly mother. So there's two guises to each archetype that I will get, a dichotomy of each archetype. So for Mother Nature, its positive and negative guises are life-giving mother or destructive goddess. Point 2, father culture. Point 4, side note, father culture is divided into wise, tyrannical. So you have either a wise king or a tyrannical king. Culture itself is represented by the father figure. The father is culture, and culture is the father. So in a walled city, the culture is what the king says it is. And he can be wise, benevolent, or he can be tyrannical and devouring, and devour his child, his son. So the totalitarianisms of the 20th century were a perfect example of stultified tyrannical culture. Anarchy may be nature, but when culture solidifies and it kills, it's tyrannical, or when it's benevolent, like let's call Britain and America benevolent in World War II, in the context of World War II. Father culture, and that guys, as wise, benevolent guys, is fighting for freedom and democracy and what have you, if you put it into those categories. Point 3, The individual, or point 4, side part 3, the individual hero, the individual, the archetypal individual, the divine son or the devil figure. That's the two guises it can take. It can be the hero or the devil figure. So you have benevolent, life-giving Mother Nature or destructive Mother Nature, or you have benevolent, wise king, tyrannical king, and for the individual, what it comes down to, the single individual, you have the hero and the devil figure opposed to each other. And getting into the individual is in Egyptian mythology or in Mesopotamian mythology. The individual can be represented by the eye at the top of the pyramid on the $1 bill. The eye, it pays attention. That's the hero's secret power, is the attention that he can pay. He can devote his mind, his full focus to one narrow thing, to identifying the anomaly, to creative exploratory behavior, and he can come back after having slayed the dragon, bring back the booty to the walled city. So you have Mother Nature, Father Culture, individual hero, devil figure. Now we'll get more closely into this, carry on further. Point 5, culture is a walled city. Threat is anomaly. So the culture, Father Culture, as I've said before to Peterson, is a walled city, the square walled city. Inside the city is the domain of order and Father Culture. The city can stultify into tyrannical or stultified culture, in which case it's imprisoning its own citizens, it's slaying people, executing people without due process, and even against all morals. But the wise city is growing. In either case, a hero can go to regenerate and redeem the city. And the hero travels outside of the walled city to confront the snake, the Uberus. The Uberus, I think Peterson mentions, is this snake dragon creature, or the dragon itself guarding the gold and guarding the princess. Culture is a walled city, though. Think of it at on the metaphysical level. Culture is a walled city. You are in it. You are in a house. You're in your body. You're in a house. You're in a town. You're in a province. You are in a country. But it all comes down to, metaphorically speaking, a walled city. Point 6, ideologies. Groups detest anomaly, stranger. So the ideology, think of the ideology as different towns. One town has a stranger come to its gates, and it can't stand the stranger. Maybe it's a tyrannical culture. It can't stand the stranger approaching the gates. So what does it do? It kills him, captures him, sends him away. It can't, and this is on a broader scale in World War II or in the conflicts of the 20th century. The communists couldn't stand the fascists couldn't stand the communists, and they all couldn't stand the liberals, the liberal Democrats. They all were at loggerheads with one another, because to each culture, communism, fascism, and liberal democracy, each one represented the stranger to the other, not the big other, but the large other. To a fascist, a communist is the other. To a communist, a fascist is another. To all of them, liberal democracy is another. Or other. So ideologies. So if you think of the Soviets in the late 20th century, they would be watching, let's say the jet, the Blackbird that took pictures over the Soviet Union. They shot it down, or not the Blackbird. They shot down another version, but the Blackbird's over the top taking pictures. And when that pilot comes down, that pilot parachutes down. When they shoot it down, he is captured, and he is a stranger that presents a threat to their culture. In this case, it may be a real threat. But in other cases, maybe the stranger should be addressed with curiosity rather than hostility. So ideologies and groups broadly categorize themselves as Father Culture. Point 7. The only thing that protects culture is the redemptive qualities of the hero. So when the culture stultifies, falls down, fails, when the walled city degenerates, breaks down, it takes a hero to redeem it. The hero must travel outside into unexplored territory, into the unknown, conquer the dragon, conquer the threat, conquer the anomaly, maybe deal with a stranger, go to the stranger's land and deal with them. And then he comes back to the walled city, to Father Culture, and redeems it, and then he becomes king, and then he becomes a wise king and redeems it. So that's the only thing that protects culture is the redemptive qualities of the hero. Keep that in mind. And it gets back to the quote I mentioned before. Each individual can serve as a hero. Each individual can serve as a hero in their respective lives. Point 8. The hero is opposed to the devil who leads the stultifying culture. All I know is all I need to know. So the devil figure is rationality in excess. All I know is all I need to know. I don't need to learn anything else. I don't need to deal with a stranger. I don't need to deal with Mother Nature or the anomaly. All I know is rational, it's closed, it's logical, it's in its own right, it's correct. There's no need to deal with the hero's journey. So when you do away with the hero and you do away with the hero's journey, that's when your culture, that's when the ideology stultifies. So the Soviet Union or fascist Germany or fascist Italy, they no longer have the heroes going outside the walled city. They see everything as threat. So like the Germans, the Nazis saw every other race as a threat to their existence because they didn't want to engage with any of the other races on equal terms or in terms of treating them with benevolence. The Soviets just thought that they should build up nuclear bombs. Maybe they were justified against the USA because they were both building nuclear bombs. But the Soviets had the Iron Curtain, right? The Iron Wall or the Iron Curtain across Europe. You have the Soviets building walls, the Berlin Wall, to keep out the stranger, keep out the threat, keep out the anomaly, and they no longer seek the hero to redeem their culture. But the devil figure in the Western tradition, especially from Christianity, in the Bible, the biblical heritage, it says, all I know is all I need to know. I am a noble spirit. I revere myself. Therefore, I don't need to know anything else. And this logic can be found very prevalently in many individuals, many cultures. Finally, point 9. The hero transcends and regenerates culture. So I think I mentioned this, but the only thing that can redeem father culture, it's like Peterson says, the hero has to go to, like in Pinocchio, has to go to the belly of the whale and rescue his father from the belly of the whale. The same way the hero's father is the culture that he was born in. He must go down to the depths of his own psyche, of the collective human psychosis, to rescue his father from the belly of the whale and redeem father culture. Otherwise, father culture is dead, it is lost, or it stultifies and becomes tyrannical. So keep all these archetypes in mind. He got a lot of these archetypes from Carl Jung. He got the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell, and he did a lot of his mythological research through Iliad. He also quotes Solzhenitsyn quite a bit, and Nietzsche quite a bit, and goes back to different poets and recount accounts of the Second World War, how the prisoners in the Gulag were treated, or the prisoners in Auschwitz were treated. But if you know these archetypes from point 4, mother, nature, father, culture, individual, hero, and the positive and negative guises of each, you have a map for how reality is relayed back to yourself through the mythic representative world. You see the world as a place for action. Science has its place in measuring and determining objects, but we are adapted, evolutionary speaking, in the way that we actually view the world is a mythic way, with these archetypes living, and even playing in our dreams, playing in the unconscious mind, and being relayed through our thoughts, filtered through our thoughts and our ego and consciousness every single day. So I hope this was good for you. Peterson finally answered why do cultures go to war? It's because they will do anything to keep away the stranger or the threat or the anomaly. If they don't have a hero within their ranks to deal with the threat or the anomaly, they will stultify, they will build bigger walls, they will start capturing prisoners, and the resulting horrors of the 20th century stand testament to exactly the necessity and the urgency with which this map must be used, analyzed. And I think Peterson, in one of his early lectures from Harvard, said something like, we do not understand World War II or the Holocaust. We do not understand the Holocaust because we can't remember it because we don't understand it. We still don't understand why it happened. This map goes some way into determining why it happened on the evolutionary level, on the psychological level, on the philosophical and mythic level. this map provides you with the means to determine what the ideological conflicts that you see around you. I hope this was good for you. I could do more videos on this book. I hope this one takes off, and I hope it was worthwhile. Thank you. Bye-bye.